All right, let's talk about something that happens to all of us, handling objections. We're going to break down how you can take those really tricky moments in a conversation and actually turn them into a huge win.
You've totally been there, right? You're feeling passionate, you've put in the work, and then bam, someone hits you with a yeah, but or a what about this? It can feel like running straight into a brick wall. But what if it didn't have to be that way? Okay, so let's dive in. The very first thing we have to accept is that objections are just normal. They're gonna happen. No matter how amazing your idea is, somebody is going to have a question or a concern. It's an inevitable and, honestly, a pretty healthy part of any real discussion. And here's the big mindset shift. An objection isn't really a no. You gotta think of it more like a request for more information. It literally shows you what the other person is worried about, what they care about, and that gives you a clear path forward to actually build some trust. So, how do you navigate this without getting all defensive? Well, what if you had a super simple, structured way to handle it? A method that lets you go from that feeling of chaos when you're being challenged to a calm, cool, confident response every single time. Well, that framework comes down to just 3 letters. A, A, A. That's it. This is the core of the whole technique. It's incredibly simple, which makes it so easy to remember right when you need it most. And what do those letters stand for? It's acknowledge, align, and advance. This is our 3-step playbook for turning pretty much any objection into a really constructive conversation. So let's break down exactly what each of those means. We're about to get into the real mechanics behind each of these steps because, understanding the why behind acknowledge, align, and advance, well, that's what makes this whole thing so incredibly powerful. The first A is acknowledge, and this is absolutely crucial. This isn't about agreeing with them, not at all. It's just about showing that you genuinely heard them. Simple things like, I can see why you're concerned about, or, that's a really valid point. It immediately brings their defenses down and opens the door to a real talk. Okay, next up is align. After you've shown them you're listening, this is where you build a bridge. You find some piece of common ground, or you show a little empathy for where they're coming from. You could say something like, a lot of teams we talk to feel that way, or I totally agree that making this efficient is the #1 priority. You're basically showing that you're on the same team, trying to solve the same problem. And finally, you advance. So, once you've acknowledged and you've aligned, you've earned the right to bring your idea back into the conversation. But here's the key. You don't just repeat what you said before. You pivot. You explain how your solution specifically solves the concern they just brought up, but in a new or a better way. All right, theory is great and all, but let's see how this actually works out in the real world. We're going to take a look at a few super common objections and just apply our AAA framework directly to them. A classic. You've probably heard this one, right? Someone compares your new, very specific thing to a big, general tool that everybody knows. The gut instinct is to get defensive and just start listing features, but let's see what the framework tells us to do instead. Just look at the difference here. That instinctive reply, you're wrong, that's just starting a fight. But the AAA reply? It completely sidesteps the conflict. It smartly reframes the whole conversation around the job that needs to be done. It's about research versus decision-making. It's confident, not combative. Huge difference. Okay, here's another common one. An objection that just dismisses your idea as, unoriginal. And that can be really frustrating to hear, especially when you know it's not true. See what's happening? A flat-out denial like it's not a poll just creates tension. But the AAA response is so much smarter. It actually uses their word poll as a launchpad to introduce a completely new idea, measuring confidence and consensus. You're re-educating them, but without sounding condescending. Oh, this is a big one. A real, practical, logistical objection. This isn't about the value of your idea. It's about the headache of getting people to use it. And for any team leader, that is a very, very real concern. This is a perfect example of the framework's power. The instinctive reply, they'll have to, well, that just creates a power struggle. But the AAA reply? It correctly figures out that the real objection isn't about another app. It's about friction. And by addressing that root problem head-on, no app needed. The objection just disappears. Problem solved. So what have we learned here? By using this simple framework, you're not just answering a question. You're changing the entire dynamic of the conversation. You're moving from a potential no to a very clear, okay, what's next? So let's just lock in these core ideas one more time. You acknowledge to prove you're listening, you align to build that human connection, and then you advance to show your unique value. This isn't just some trick to win an argument, it's a real strategy for building trust and turning that friction into forward momentum. So, I'm going to leave you with this question. Think about your work, your projects, your day-to-day conversations. What's that one recurring objection that always seems to trip you up? The one you kind of dread hearing.
Well, the great news is you don't have to dread it anymore because you now have a framework not just to answer it, but to completely master it. Acknowledge, align, advance. Give it a shot in your next conversation.